Hi, I'm Jeremy, and today I'm going to take a look at one of the absolute best three-player games that you could get. That is named San Marco, and it comes from Alan Moon and Aaron Weissblum, the designers. The game is for ages 10 and up, and it plays from 3 to 4, but it's really ideally suited for 3 players, I would say. The game plays in about, it says on the back of the box here, 75 minutes, but I would say it's more like 45 minutes to an hour. And it was published in the year 2001, so it is pretty long out of print at this point. Copies could be found on the used market, but they do tend to go for a little bit of cash. So the game is an area control game where you're going to be placing cubes within regions within Venice, which are segmented by canals, so you'll have to be building bridges to get across those regions. I'll take a moment to show you how the rules work, and then I'll come back and give you my opinion. Okay, so here I have the board for a 3-player game of San Marco at the start of the game. You'll notice that each player has 8 cubes on the board. Each player is going to roll the die 4 times and be able to populate the board with some cubes. If they roll the same thing 4 times, they just keep re-rolling until they're in at least 2 districts. And then each player is going to pick 2 spaces for bridges, which they'll mark as owning with their cube. So if between any 2 areas there can only be 3 bridges. So for example, between the island of San Marco and Castello here, there can only be 3 bridges. So this is a 3-player setup. The game definitely plays best, I think, with 3 players. So let me just show you how a round works. So the game's going to be played over these 3 phases, and each turn there's going to be actions. There's going to be actions determined by this turn order track. So there's going to be a person who's the card distributor, the person who's the first chooser, and the person who's the second chooser. So what that means is the card distributor is going to take 6 action cards in a 3-player game, and they'll look at them, and I'll explain what these action cards do in a moment. And then they will take 4 of these cards. These are called limit cards. They just have a number on them. And then what they're going to want to do is to set those up into 3 different piles. And the idea being that they are creating piles that are going to be attractive to each player, because the distributor gets to determine the distribution of the 3 piles of cards. But then the first person picks first, second person picks second, and the distributor gets the 3rd pile that's left. So it's a you slice, I choose sort of dilemma. So let's say, not thinking about this very much at all, the distributor sets up the cards something like this, maybe adds that there, and something like that. And then it would be, so the black player would be the distributor, it would be the white player's choice to pick one of these piles. So the white player is in this area and this area, so they might want to make sure that they spread out during the course of the game. Oh, they're also here. And, well, I don't want to get caught up in analysis paralysis here, but let's say they pick this set of cards. So, first of all, they would get... they would immediately execute them before even the second picker gets to pick a set of cards. So they would get these limit cards for 4 points, and they'd carry those over from throughout the round, and I'll explain those in a moment. Then they would get these 2 cards, and they could execute them in any order they want. So first of all, this is a typical card. It's a San Marco card, and there's cards representing the 6 regions on the board. This is an area control game, basically. So it also tells you the scoring. So the way the scoring works in each region when it's scored is whoever's in first place within a region that has most cubes is going to get 8 points. And whoever's in second place within a region, so second most cubes, is going to get 6 points. And the way it works in a case of a tie, and there are a lot of ties in this game, is that if people tie for first place, they both get the second place prize. So tie for first place, both players would get 6 points, and there'd be no second place rewarded. If somebody was in first place, they would get 8 points, and there was a tie for second place, they would get nothing, so that 6 points would not be rewarded at all. So whenever you get one of these cards, you're able to place within that area as such, so 1 cube. So the white player picked, so they would be able to place 1 cube, and then they have the option, if they wanted to migrate that cube into any adjacent area using one of the bridges that they own. So this bridge they own, They don't own any of the other bridges. If they wanted to, they could move across to that space, but considering second place here is worth 6 points, it might be smart for them to stay there. So then after that, they have this card which they want to execute. So this is a Doge card, and the Doge card controls this little figure here, which starts off the board. And whenever you activate the Doge card, it's going to move into a region and then score that region. So because this is the only region that the white player is in, they would probably choose to have the Doge just come here and score that region. They would get first place, 6 points. So you would mark that on the score track here. And since nobody is there at all for second place, that's not awarded. Now, the first time the Doge comes onto the board, it could go to any space. Then in the future turns, the way the Doge movement moves when a Doge card is played is that it can move for free. So it's from the space it was left in the last region that was scored. It can move for free over any of your colored bridges. And if you want to use an opponent's bridge, you have to pay 1 victory point and then give them 1 victory point. So it's a 2-point swing between you and the opponent. Alternatively, if there's no bridges connecting an area and you want to go to that area, you could just move the Doge across the canal without a bridge, but that will cost you 2 victory points. No one gets paid victory points in that case. So that's how the Doge works, and so that would be the end of the white player's turn after picking those 2 cards. So now it would be blue player's turn to pick cards. So looking at where they are here, which is a nice area for them. They're already in second. Then there is this one, this card here, which I'll explain. It's called a transfer card. And what that lets you do is it lets you replace any card or any cube from an opponent with one of your own in any district. So, and then let me see, these 2, there's no one here at all for second place. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that the blue player takes these 3. So they would first perhaps do this one, Castillo. They would place one of their cubes into there, which would, set them up for a second place if there was a scoring in that region. And then they have the option, they don't have the option rather to migrate, because there's only one bridge connecting this section and it's not owned by them. And then they would get to use this card, which allows them to replace one of the opponent's cubes with one of their own. So maybe it would make sense to remove that white cube that was just placed and replace it with a blue cube, denying white second place and, boosting their hold in this high scoring region. And then the limit card, they would keep that. So then the black player who initially divided the cards would be left with these cards. So this card, they would have to place a cube in this region. And since there's no bridge that's owned by them, they'd just leave it there. And this card, they could do a swap like we just saw. So they might, for example, what goes around comes around. They might remove the blue player's cube and place their black cube in that region. So those are most of the card types, but there are a few others, and I'll just show you those really briefly. So there's bridge cards, which allow you to place a bridge connecting any 2 islands. So, to do that, you would just take one from the supply, provided that there are some, and then you would place that there with one of your cubes on top of it to indicate ownership. So just like that. If there are no cubes left in the general supply, you get to steal somebody else's bridge and claim ownership of it. So you get to move it and claim ownership of it. And then, the most powerful card in the game, I would think, is called the Banishment card. And here is what that looks like. And so when you get the Banishment card, you get to banish cubes from a region. So the way that works is, let's say this was the blue player situation here. They would get to declare, a region. So let's say they say San Marco, and then they'll roll the die. And this is just a normal 6-sided die. They roll the die, and they get to remove the number of cubes that comes up on the die. So they, the blue player would obviously remove the 3 white cubes. Now, if the player had rolled, for example, a 5, they still have to satisfy that requirement as long as there are still cubes within the region. So they would have to remove the 3 white cubes, then they'd still have to remove 2 more, so they would have to remove their own 2 cubes, leaving just 1 cube in that region. So the Banishment card is really powerful, but there is some risk involved in that. So those are really all the different types of action cards that you get in the game. So just the region cards, the Doge cards for scoring, the Banishment card, and then the transfer card and bridge card. So just from that, you're going to be, over the course of the game, manipulating the number of cubes are within a region. But I'll come back now and explain what these limit cards do. So after the end of the turn, after each of the players had selected a set of cards and executed them, then the turn order would change. So the black would go down to the bottom and the other two would slide up. So now white would be the divider, blue first pick, and black second pick, and so on. So that will keep rotating over the course of the game. But after every round, you're going to check to see the total of limit cards. If the total of limit cards for each player is under 10, then you'll just play around as normal with distributing a new set of cards. If one player is over 10, let's say, this player here has, that's 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. If that happens, this player will be out of the round because they're over 10, and then these two players will get another round. And the way that works is that whoever is the next chooser will get to choose 5 action cards instead of 6, and 3 limit cards instead of 5. And they'll, whoever the chooser is will divide them into 2 piles since the third player is out of the round, and then they'll execute those as normal. So let's say this is how it pans out. So now that they've done their one little bonus round, what you do at the end of the round is you look at the scoring or the total of the limit cards for each player. So first of all, you check if each player who has less than 10 limit points, so in this case this player has 6 and this player has 4, they get points equal to the number that they have subtracted from the number that the player with the most has. So for example, this player has 11, this player has 6, they would get 5 points. This player has 4, this player has 11, they would get 7 points. So that's one bonus. And then as long as there's one person with the single lowest number of limit cards, so that would be this player here with 4, they would get to perform a free banishment action in any region as if they had played a banishment card. So, if this was the blue player, they might want to banish here. So they would roll, and then they would get to remove a cube. So say they would do that. And those two things happen at the end of the round. Then you'll move on to the next round and repeat the whole process with these limit cards getting discarded out of the game, and then any action cards that were played getting reshuffled into the deck. And then you'll just draw the cards and begin again for the second round. So the same thing will happen over the course of the second and the third round. And then at the end of the game, there will be a scoring in each round, or in each area rather. So every area will get scored. And then whoever has the most points at the end of that, after every region has been scored, will be the winner. Okay, so that's San Marco. It's, on the surface, a really simple area control game, but with 3 players and that unique mechanism of dividing up the action among those 3 players in a way that ensures that you as the divider will still get cards that you want, really elevates the game. With 3 players, I could think of very few games I would prefer to play. The game has a relatively simple rule set, I would say, but at the same time it allows for a lot of manipulation of those cubes within a region. So between the banishment action, between the replacement action, and between the way that the scoring works by moving the Doge marker, you could really set up situations that favor you and not your opponents, which is pretty incredible given the small set of rules and small number of possible interactions in the course of the game. The other consideration, I think, in the game is creating those piles so that if a player is going to get actions that really favors them, you're putting a lot of limit cards on that, so they might get knocked out of the round early and perhaps lose better actions in the future. Sometimes it's worth it to take limit cards if you're going to get an action that allows you to score a region or two in your favor, considering that most of the scoring in the game comes at the end of the game. So I've played the game, a lot over the number of years I've had it, and it's always been a hit with everybody that I've taught it to. I think that it's a shame that's not in print anymore. I think part of that might be because of the fact that it really does play best with 3 players, period, even though it does go to 4. I ain't going into the rules for the 4-player game, but they are slightly different. I would suggest that if you want to look that up, you look up the rules on Board Game Geek or something like that. But really, for a 3-player area control game, you could hardly do any better. So that is San Marco, and highly recommended game from me. So thanks for watching.